Hello, students. Hope all of you are happy, healthy. Though we are facing lots of difficulties relating to foods, medicines, money, etc., don't give up. Be positive. We shall overcome this crisis very soon. Keeping in mind about your education so that you may not lag behind, SPI has decided to give you lessons on various subjects through online teaching learning process. It is an enjoyable learning process, and I think you will also enjoy it very much. Today, in English class of class 10, I am going to tell you a story from your syllabus, A Letter to God, written by G.L. Fuentes. George Lopez Fuentes was a Mexican novelist, poet, and journalist. He was born on November 17, 1897. He started writing at the age of 15, when the Mexican Revolution began. He became a teacher of literature at school in Mexico City. His stories were seen as exciting, humorous, and symbolic of Mexico. Many of his books are related to civil conflict. He was died on December 10, 1966. A Letter to God. It's a story about hard life and extreme faith in God of a poor farmer named Lencho, who had just lost his crop due to heavy rain and hailstones. It was the only source of income to fulfill his family's desire. He firmly believed that God would help him in such a difficult situation and would not let him and his family die of hunger. So he wrote a letter to God to seek help. The story is amusing and yet lovable. It highlights the theme of faith and explores how people like Lencho can respond when driven by it. The innocent and childlike Lencho is the main character of this story. The characters here: Lencho, postmaster, post office employees. Lencho was a poor farmer who lived on the crest of a low hill with his family. His was the only house in the entire valley. His field was full of ripe corn and easily visible from the house. He was eagerly waiting for a good rain to have a good harvest, so he could earn money for his family. As Lancho hoped, it started raining at the time of supper, which gave Lancho a ray of hope. He was extremely delighted to see that. He compared the raindrops with silver coins, which shows his joy. But soon his joy turned into despair, as the rain changed into hailstones, which ruined the crops. The field had been covered with snow like a layer of white salt. Lancho was worried for his family. He lost his hopes. Though Lancho was a poor farmer and had lost all his crops, he had firm faith in God. He found in God his last hope and decided to write a letter to God for help. Actually, it is an impossible thing, irrelevant in our real life. How a mortal being can send a letter to God? But here, Lancho did it. In his letter, he asked God to send him 100 pesos currency so that he could sow his field again and support his family until the new crops were harvested. He also wrote that if God didn't help him, his family would die of hunger. But there is a twist in the story. We all know that we can't send letter to the Almighty, or we can't meet Him in reality. But we pray to God. We believe in God. We are the believer, and God is the giver. When Lencho dropped its letter to the post office, the postmaster, after reading the letter, the unusual letter, laughed at first. But soon he realized that Lancho was in critical crisis and had firm faith in God. He thought, His belief should not be shaken. So he decided to help Lancho with the help of his post office employees. He collected 70 pesos and handed the envelope to Lancho himself, in which he also contributed a part of his salary. Lancho opened the envelope and became angry when he saw 70 pesos in the envelope, as he had demanded 100 pesos. He didn't believe that God could do such a mistake and send him less money. So he decided to write a letter again for the rest of money. In this letter, he requested God not to send the rest of the money through the money order because he thought that the post office employees were a bunch of crooks who might have stolen his money. It's a ridiculous thing. I think you understood the story. The surprising turn when Lancho complains to God about the dishonesty of the employees of the post office and the postmaster, who actually helped him. This story is quite amusing. What is actually not happen in real life. The author also delicately poses the questions. Is Lancho's unquestioning faith in a God appropriate? He is very faithful in his prayer to God, asking for 100 pesos that he needs. Is Lencho innocent and childlike, or native and an ignorant simpleton? What do you think after listening the story? God answers his prayers through the post office clerks who sympathized with the farmer and donate the money. But at last, they were blamed for stolen money. The faith of Lencho is as such that he cannot imagine that it couldn't have been God who cheated him. Ironically, he assumes that the officials are dishonest. So, what message we received from the story? The message conveyed through this interesting story is that while faith is one's spiritual need, one should be realistic and rational. Unquestioning and irrational faith, like Lancho's, can make such people highly vulnerable. In the story, a comic end is achieved due to the good intentions of the post office employees. However, the situation could have been totally different, even dangerous, if the latter had been found by a bunch of crooks who may have exploited Lancho's gullibility to their advantage. The last letter, if read by the postmaster again, what would happen? The stories end, but left some questions. Whether Lencho's behavior is right. So, I think you listened the story minutely, understood, and try to listen repeatedly to achieve the great lesson from the story. Goodbye.